Temporary Insanity. Halle Butler's The New Me is an office novel for a precarious age by Jia Tolentino. In its ability to induce paralyzing existential depression, the fiction of Halle Butler is perhaps matched only by those Black Friday news stories in which grandmothers get trampled in front of stacks of 55-inch TVs. When I first read Jillian, Butler's debut, which was published in 2015 and concerns a woman's contemptuous obsession with a delusional coworker, my normally sanguine temperament evaporated about halfway through and was replaced, for several stressful days, by a blistering hostility that made me afraid to speak, lest I accidentally tell a good friend that I wished she were dead. Reading Butler's latest novel, The New Me, published by Penguin, about a young woman living in Chicago and working as a temp, I reached that point before the end of the second paragraph. Quote, in the windowless back offices of a designer furniture showroom, women stand in a circle, stuffed into ill-fitting black jeans, gray jeans, olive jeans, the ass cloth sagging 1 inch too below where the cheeks meet. They don't notice this on themselves, but they notice it on each other. They wear cheap suede ankle boots and incomprehensible furry vests that flap against them as they talk, pushing their voices out an octave too high, lotioned, soft, gummy hands gesturing wildly. One of them wears a top knot. Another checks her pedometer. Close quote. The ludicrously sincere ballad I'll Be by Edwin McCain is playing in the background. One woman disparages her own outfit, obviously seeking compliments. Another colleague, quote, smiles, barely containing her disgust, and says, "No, you look cute," with her words, and, "Oh my God, shut the fuck up," with her eyes. Close quote. The narrator of The New Me, Millie, spends her days stapling papers in pursuit of the elusive temp to perm, meaning the job. Spends her days stapling papers in pursuit of the elusive temp to perm, while teetering on the brink of total emotional breakdown. Her parents, comfortable retirees, subsidize her tiny apartment. She ruined her last romantic relationship. She has one quasi-friend, Sarah, but it's a parasitic situation. Millie lets Sarah monopolize conversations, which makes Sarah rely on Millie's company, which gives Millie a way to feel superior. Millie is 30, young enough to expect more from life than $12 an hour at work and episodes of Forensic Files on her laptop, but old enough to see that although her job may be temporary, her feelings of insignificance and inadequacy might never go away. Millie's inner monologue has proceeded uninterrupted for a long time, and it has become both stale and vicious. There's a, quote, nice illusion of variety, close quote, in temp work, she thinks. Quote, like how people switch out their cat's wet food from chicken and liver to sea bass, but in the end, it's all just flavored anus, close quote. All day, her thoughts churn wildly. Her brain, a greasy stationary bike of dread and bitterness and dissociation. But almost nothing comes out of her mouth except for the strained, cheerful lorem ipsum of middle-class female public courtesy. Oops, sorry, she says, or no, I get it, or oh, okay, great. She also speaks the elaborately self-conscious language of internet discourse, run through a woman bitching at a bar filter. After a coworker calls her Maddie instead of Millie, she labels her a, quote, fucking thankless cunt, close quote, then assures the reader, open quote. Obviously, I recognize in a grander sense that I have a tendency to alienate myself and blow things out of proportion, and that these women are basically guiltless from a certain perspective, close quote. Despite Millie's acknowledgement that she might strive all her life without ever being happy or doing anything meaningful, striving nonetheless provides the entire grammar of her life. She sucks in her stomach and puts coconut oil in her hair and tries to remember to stretch. She fantasizes about having, quote, a clean winter coat, a swatch, perfume, a haircut, boots both warm and fashionable, a good body, non-threatening relationships, a clean kitchen, someone to talk to. Really, I would take anyone, close quote. The office novel is a perennially depressed genre, going back at least to Bartleby. In fiction, readers are more likely to find a happy marriage, of all things, than they are to find a hopeful and fulfilling story of work. The mood of malaise and doom that permeates The New Me recalls Joshua Ferris's book, Then We Came to the End, and Ed Parks's Personal Days, novels that were published in 2007 and 2008, respectively, and that responded in part to the dot-com crash that took place several years earlier. But while both Ferris and Park employed the first-person plural in an attempt to capture the workplace hive mind, Butler situates her novel squarely inside a single head. The New Me conveys a degree of isolation more extreme than anything in those earlier books. This is partly a matter of gender. Office fiction about women tends to show its protagonists buckling under a balancing act alone. Think of Alison Pearson's I Don't Know How She Does It, in which a hedge fund manager gets the life drained out of her by the age of 35. Or Helen Fielding's Bridget Jones's Diary, whose bumbling heroine's career is defined by her ability to seem desirable at the workplace. Ling Ma's Severance, published last year, tells the story of a woman who goes to work even after everyone else in her office and nearly everyone else in New York City is dead. But the difference between The New Me and its predecessors is also a matter of timing. In Ferris's and Park's novels, the characters' seemingly secure existences are upended by layoffs. Soon after those books were published, the real estate market collapsed and the Great Recession began. Millie belongs to a generation that has no expectation that a job will ever be secure. The New Me feels like a definitive work of millennial literature, a cross between Seasonal Associate, Heike Geisler's autobiographical novel about working in an Amazon warehouse, and the sort of Tumblr account that would go viral before getting its author fired. There is no margin for the errors that Butler's characters keep making. Jillian's mental health unravels after she is unable to pay a $200 fine. Millie understands that the difference between $12 and $18 an hour could determine the trajectory of her life. Both of Butler's novels sent me back to Mark Fisher's 2009 book, Capitalist Realism, in which Fisher, a cultural theorist and critic, examined the contemporary notion that there is no other possible arrangement of society but the one we know in the West now, in which we are encouraged to think of ourselves as profit generators and to regard the other people in our lives as instruments or impediments. A life that makes the brain feel crowded and the heart feel alone. Fisher, who devoted his academic work and his beloved blog, K-Punk, to advocating for alternatives, argued that we need to remember the strangeness of this condition, even though it passes as mundane. He wrote extensively about his experience of depression and about the kind of hopelessness that capitalism can create, which, he pointed out, we are encouraged to read as a personal problem. Fisher died by suicide in 2017 at the age of 48. At one point in Capitalist Realism, he writes that, quote, "We need to ask, how has it become acceptable that so many people, and especially so many young people, are ill?" Close quote. Millie's sadness and alienation might yield to medication and therapy, but how could she afford therapy on $12 an hour? Under the unrelenting fluorescence of Butler's attention, Millie's state of mind seems like the only logical response to her circumstances. She is caught in a very particular gap. She grew up privileged enough that she never quite needed to develop inner resources, but she has not been able to ascend to the realm of people who have outer resources either. Butler is most acute in her descriptions of how this late capitalist nightmare affects the lives of women who occupy a certain stratum in American life. A stratum filled with suede boots from DSW and names like Amanda, Holly, Lisa, and Karen. Whereas a middle-class white man in a comparable situation might turn to Reddit or to video games and might openly express his disaffection, these women purchase throw pillows on clearance and cook Brussels sprouts like nothing has gone wrong. The women of Jillian and the new me form strict minor hierarchies with other women. They all find one another pathetic and abhorrent, but they still chirp hello every morning and make polite conversation as they warm up leftovers in the break room. The need to keep up a functional appearance turns to acid inside them. They begin to project their fears of being unkempt and deficient onto everyone around them. They mutter half-conscious insults and retorts on the toilet or on the commute home. Brutal judgment flows down a pyramid of people engaged in the same project, trying to outrun personal and systemic insecurity. It is completely monstrous and utterly ordinary. It's the ordinariness, the familiarity that makes Butler's work so wretchedly riveting. As I read The New Me, I started to feel like one of her characters, a woman who could spend a whole day saying nothing but thanks in public and fuck you in private, perhaps in the shower, perhaps to everyone she's ever met. I was on edge, alive to the possibility that I was useless and despicable. There's pleasure in her work, but it's the sick, obsessive pleasure of looking under a bandage at a wound. The cover of The New Me shows a fly resting on a portrait of a sandy-haired young woman. When you start the novel, you assume that the woman represents Millie. When you're done, you realize that Millie is the fly. The novel catches her in a final minute of frantic reaction, wrapped in a jar, flailing against what's to come. Early on, while shredding papers at the office, she thinks, quote, "I should read a book. I should make some friends. I should write some emails. I should go to the movies. I should get a hobby. I should buy a plant. I should figure out why no one wants to be around me. I should go to the same bar every night, become a regular. I should volunteer again. I should get a cat or a plant or some nice lotion or some white strips," close quote. What she needs is love and a job that pays her enough money to live on. Instead, she clings to the very American idea that everything will get better through more work and more consumption. It has to. Otherwise, what would be the purpose of any of the things we're supposed to do? A review of the work by Halle Butler, but in particular her latest novel, The New Me, and that was written by Jia Tolentino. And I thought it was really interesting, and it's right up my alley.